Mom, the Harper name embarrasses me. It makes me feel small. My son said that at his engagement party, in front of 40 people, while I sat alone at a corner table holding a glass of water so tight I thought it might shatter in my hand. He didn't even look at me when he said it. Victor thought this 72-year-old garbage truck woman would crumble. He thought I'd sit there, swallow my shame, and keep writing checks. He was wrong. Because while he and his new family were planning to destroy me, I was planning something of my own. And what I did at his wedding in front of 200 witnesses with cameras rolling went viral with 2 million views overnight. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. Let me tell you how one speech brought down a family of criminals and gave me back my dignity. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. And just so you know, this story includes some fictionalized elements used to share meaningful lessons. Any resemblance to real names or settings is purely coincidental. 6 months ago, I thought I knew my son. I thought I understood what mattered to him, what drove him, what he valued. I didn't know anything. Not yet. It was January, middle of a Chicago winter, the kind of cold that doesn't just bite at chews, gets into your bones and stays there like an unwelcome guest. We were at a French restaurant downtown, one of those places where the menu has no prices and the waiters move like they're performing surgery on your plate. Victor had insisted on it for the engagement party, said it was appropriate. I showed up in my navy suit, the only one I owned that wasn't work clothes. I'd pressed it myself that morning, hung it on the bathroom door while I showered so the steam would ease out the wrinkles. It was the suit I wore to funerals and court hearings, and the one time a year I went somewhere that required more than steel-toed boots. Victor was already there with Natalie Prescott, his fiancée. She looked perfect. Hair swept up in some complicated arrangement that probably took 2 hours and $300. A dress that caught the light every time she moved silk, maybe. I didn't know designers, but I knew expensive when I saw it. Her father, Richard Prescott, sat at the head table like he owned the place. Maybe he did. He had that look, jaw set, shoulders squared, eyes scanning the room like he was appraising real estate. There were about 40 people. I recognized 3 faces. The rest were strangers in expensive clothes holding champagne flutes, laughing at jokes I didn't understand. Something about a vineyard in Napa. Something about someone's yacht. I sat at my assigned table not near the front and folded my hands in my lap. A waiter appeared. "Something to drink, ma'am." "Water's fine, thank you." He nodded like I'd said something quaint. I watched Victor work the room. He was good at it. The handshake, the lean in, the laugh that came half a second too late to be genuine. He moved through those people like he belonged there. Maybe he did. Maybe I was the one who didn't belong. At 7:30, Victor stood to make a toast. I figured he'd thank everyone, say something nice about Natalie, maybe mention his mother, maybe glance my way and smile. Instead, he said something that stopped my heart. "Natalie and I have an announcement," he said, grinning. His arm was around her waist. She was beaming. "When we get married, I'll be taking a new name." The room leaned forward. "Victor Prescott Harper." He paused for effect. Prescott first, of course. The room erupted. People smiled, nodded. Someone called out, "How romantic." Someone else said, "So modern." Applause. Champagne glasses rising. I sat there. My water glass felt like it weighed 20 pounds. I looked at Victor, waiting for him to glance my way, waiting for some flicker of acknowledgement, some sign that he knew what he'd just done. He didn't look at me, not once. He was too busy soaking up the attention arm around Natalie, basking in the glow of people who thought erasing your mother's name was progressive. I set my glass down very carefully. My hand was shaking, but I didn't let anyone see. I'd had 72 years of practice at not letting anyone see. I waited, through the rest of the toasts, through the laughter, through Natalie's father standing to say how honored he was to welcome Victor into the Prescott legacy. I waited until the crowd thinned, until people drifted toward the bar or the valet stand, until the energy shifted from celebration to the slow wind down of an evening. Then I found Victor. He was on the outdoor patio leaning against the railing smoking a cigarette. That was new. I didn't know he smoked. The January wind cut through my suit jacket like it wasn't there. My breath came out in white clouds. "Victor," I said quietly. He turned, exhaled smoke into the frozen air. "Mom, hey." He smiled the kind of smile you give a neighbor you barely know. "Great party, right? You're changing your name." "Yeah," he shrugged. one shoulder, casual. Prescott Harper. Nice ring to it, don't you think? I stared at him. At this man I'd carried for 9 months, nursed through fevers, driven to school every morning in a truck that smelled like diesel and coffee. You're putting their name first. Well, yeah. Another drag. Makes sense. Natalie's family is what? My voice came out sharper than I intended. Or maybe exactly as sharp as I intended. Victor sighed. The kind of sigh you give when someone is being difficult, when someone doesn't understand how the world works. Mom, don't make this a thing. It's just a name. Just a name. Something tightened in my chest. Not the familiar ache, the one I'd been ignoring for months, the one that came with shortness of breath and cold sweats at 3 a.m. This was different. This was emotional, not physical. Or maybe it was both. Victor, that's our name. Your father's name. He looked away, flicked ash over the railing, watched it disappear into the dark. Exactly, he said. That's why I need something more. Something more. Harper is a working-class name, Mom. Prescott opens doors. At networking events, at client dinners, when people hear Harper, they look at me like I'm there to fix their plumbing or haul their trash. He took another drag, then looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not quite pity, not quite contempt, something in between, something worse. You want the truth? He said. I didn't answer, but I didn't walk away. Harper embarrasses me, he said. That name makes me feel small. The words hit like a punch to the sternum. I actually stepped back. My heel caught on the patio tile and I nearly stumbled. Small? I whispered. Yeah. No shame in his voice, no hesitation. Like he was stating a fact. The sky is blue, water is wet, your name embarrasses me. I'm sorry if that hurts, but it's the truth. Prescott Harper sounds like someone who belongs in the rooms I want to be in. He paused. Harper alone. That's who you are, Mom. Not who I want to be. I wanted to say 100 things. About the 40 years I'd spent building that name. About starting with an insurance check and 2 broken-down garbage trucks and turning it into something that employed nearly 300 people. About how his father carried that name with pride when we had nothing but each other and a 2-bedroom apartment that smelled like cabbage on Sundays. But I didn't say any of those things, because looking at my son in his Italian suit with his Swiss watch and his cigarette, I realized something that froze me from the inside out. He wasn't just rejecting the name, he was rejecting me, everything I was, everything I'd built, everything I'd sacrificed so he'd never have to feel hungry or afraid or small. You really think that little of us? I asked quietly. Victor's expression softened. Just for a moment. Just long enough for me to see a flicker of something, guilt maybe, or the ghost of the boy he used to be. Then it was gone. It's not about you, Mom, he said. It's about me. My future. Your future, I repeated. Yeah, I nodded slowly. Felt something cold settle in my gut. Something heavy and permanent like a stone dropping into still water. Got it, I said. I turned and walked away, through the restaurant with its cloth napkins and crystal glasses, past all those people who thought my son was so romantic, so progressive. None of them knew what he was really saying. None of them heard what I heard. I got into my truck. Old, reliable, 20 years of service, dented fender rust spots on the tailgate. The heater barely worked. I pulled out of the parking lot and drove through empty Chicago streets, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. Halfway home I had to pull over, not because of the road, because of my chest. The ache was back. The real one, the one that had nothing to do with my son's words, and everything to do with the heart that was slowly failing inside my ribs. I opened the glove compartment with trembling fingers, found the prescription bottle, fumbled with the cap. 1 pill, under the tongue. Wait. I sat there on the shoulder of I-90 18-wheelers, shaking my truck as they roared past, and I waited for the tightness to ease. Nobody knew about the heart condition. Not Diane, my CFO. Not Robert, my lawyer. Not Sophie, the closest thing I had to a real family member who still cared. Nobody. Because if they knew, they'd tell me to slow down, to rest, to let someone else carry the weight. And I couldn't do that. Not yet. The pain faded. I pulled back onto the road. All I could hear the whole drive home was Victor's voice. Harper embarrasses me. That's who you are, Mom. Not who I want to be. I pulled into my driveway on the south side. The house was dark. It had been dark every night for 27 years, ever since James died. I sat there engine off, staring at the porch light I'd forgotten to turn on. And I knew right then, sitting in that cold truck, in that cold driveway, in that cold city, this wasn't over. Something was about to change. I could feel it the same way I felt that January wind cutting through everything, finding every crack, every weakness. My son wanted to climb higher. Fine, but he was about to learn something I'd known my whole life: the higher you climb, the harder you fall. And I'd been catching people and letting them fall for 40 years. You want to know who Alice Harper is? I'm the woman you see at 5 in the morning walking through a parking lot full of garbage trucks. Coffee in one hand, clipboard in the other. I'm the woman in the steel-toed boots at the diner. The one your kids probably laughed at on career day at school. But here's what you don't see. Victor said Harper was a working-class name. He was right, and I'm proud of that. But my son never understood it. He never wanted to. Let me tell you who I really am. Most mornings I'm up before the sun. 5 a.m., sometimes earlier. Not because I have to be, I own the company. I could sleep until noon and let someone else handle the routes and the schedules and the hydraulic failures. I don't, because that's not who I am. That's not who I've ever been. This particular morning, just another Tuesday in Chicago, I pulled into the Harper Waste Management Yard at 5:15. The place was already alive. Trucks warming up their diesel engines, rumbling like sleeping bears stirring awake. Drivers checking routes on clipboards. The smell of fuel and fresh coffee mixing in the cold air. "Morning, boss," called out Martinez. Route supervisor. Been with me 12 years. Solid man. His daughter just got into Northwestern on a scholarship, and he told everyone in the yard about it for 2 straight weeks. "Morning," I said, pulling on my work jacket. Not the fancy kind. The kind with my name stitched on the breast pocket and oil stains that wouldn't come out no matter how many times I washed it. I walked the lot like I did every morning. Checked the trucks, made sure the equipment was solid. Asked the guys about their families, their routes, any problems they were seeing. "Ms. Harper," someone yelled. It was Tommy, one of the new drivers. 23 years old, fresh out of trade school, nervous as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. "Hydraulics acting up on truck 7, he said. I set down my coffee. "Show me." 20 minutes later, my hands were black with grease, and the hydraulic line was running smooth. Tommy stood behind me, watching like I'd just performed surgery. "Boss, you didn't have to." "Yeah, I did," I said, wiping my hands on a rag that was already more grease than fabric. "Can't have you out there with faulty equipment. Not safe." I had to lean against the truck for a second after standing up. My knees protested. My lower back joined the chorus. And there it was again, the tightness in my chest. Brief, like a warning tap. I took a slow breath. Let it pass. Nobody noticed. That's the thing Victor never got. These weren't just employees. These were people who trusted me with their paychecks, their health insurance, their kids' futures. I didn't sit in some downtown high-rise pretending to be above them. I was with them. Grease under my nails and all. By 7, I was at Frank's Diner. Same booth I'd sat in for 20 years. Same red vinyl seats cracked in places. Same view of the South Side Street, the laundromat across the way, the barbershop that had changed owners 3 times, but kept the same striped pole. Frank Moretti saw me walk in. 74 years old, built like a fire hydrant, hands like baseball mitts from decades of working the grill. "Morning, Alice," he called from behind the counter. "Morning, Frank. The usual. 2 eggs over easy, bacon crispy, wheat toast, black coffee. Same breakfast since I was 30. The diner was full of working people. Construction crew in orange vests. Nurses coming off night shift, still in scrubs, eyes heavy. Transit workers in blue. None of them knew I owned a company worth millions. To them, I was just Alice, the woman in work boots who smelled faintly of diesel. That was fine by me. A couple of guys at the next table were complaining about their boss. Some corporate type who'd never done a day of real work but made 6 figures telling everyone else how to do theirs. They glanced at me. Probably figured I was one of them. I was. Just in a different way. Frank brought my coffee, set it down carefully. He always did like the cup deserved respect. "How's Victor?" he asked. Something tightened in my chest, the emotional kind this time. "Getting married soon." "That's good. That's real good." Frank wiped the counter. "Good kid." I didn't correct him, didn't say what I was thinking. Frank didn't push. 20 years of friendship had taught him when to ask and when to leave it alone. After breakfast, I headed to the office. Not some gleaming tower downtown, just a simple 2-story building attached to the yard. Brick Practical paid for in cash 15 years ago. My office was on the second floor, small, with a window overlooking the trucks. I could watch them roll out every morning like soldiers heading to the front line. Diane Walsh knocked on the open door at 8:30. She'd been my CFO for 19 years, sharp as a surgical blade and twice as precise. "Morning," she said, setting a folder on my desk. "Monthly numbers." I opened it. Revenue $31.7 million. Employees 287. Profit margins holding steady. "Looking good," I said. Diane smiled. "You know, most CEOs of $30 million companies don't show up covered in hydraulic fluid." I looked down at my hands. Still had grease under my nails. Probably would for the rest of the day. Most CEOs didn't start by driving the trucks themselves. "True enough." She paused. "When are you going to buy yourself a new truck, Alice? That thing in the parking lot is older than half our employees." I glanced out the window. My pickup sat in the lot. 20 years old. Dented. Rusted in spots. The left taillight was held on with duct tape. "Still runs," I said. Diane shook her head, but she was smiling. After 19 years, she understood. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about being cheap. In 2008, during the financial crisis, I'd almost lost everything. Revenue dropped 60% in 4 months. Clients canceled contracts. Banks called in loans. I'd sold my house, the one James and I had bought together, to keep the company alive. Cut my own salary to 0 for 18 months. Ate ramen noodles for dinner so my employees could keep getting their paychecks. We survived. Barely. I kept the old truck to remember. To remind myself that everything I had could disappear tomorrow if I got careless. If I got soft. Victor never knew about 2008. He was in college then, living in a dorm that cost $60,000 a year, eating at restaurants I couldn't afford. I made sure he never felt the squeeze. Never saw how close we came to losing it all. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe if he'd known what it cost to build this, really known, felt it in his bones the way I did, he wouldn't have thrown it away so easily. 4 months before the wedding, Victor insisted I meet her. "Mom, you're going to love Natalie," he told me over the phone. His voice had that pitch the one salesmen use when they're closing a deal. "She's everything I've been looking for." That should have been my second warning. He picked a steakhouse downtown. White tablecloths, $200 steaks, a wine list thicker than a phone book. The kind of place where they bring you warm bread and act like they're handing you the Holy Grail. I showed up in khakis and a clean button-down shirt. Felt underdressed the moment I walked through the door. The hostess looked at me like I'd wandered in from the wrong neighborhood. Victor and Natalie were already seated. She saw me first. Her face lit up with a smile that was wide and warm and absolutely perfectly practiced, like she'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror until every muscle knew its place. "Mrs. Harper?" She stood. Air kissed both my cheeks like we were in some European movie. "Victor has told me so much about you." I'll bet he had. Natalie Prescott was 31 years old and beautiful in the way that expensive things are beautiful, polished, maintained, designed to be noticed. Designer dress, jewelry that caught the light every time she moved, hair and makeup like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. But it was her eyes that told me the truth. Sharp, calculating, taking inventory of everything, my clothes, my shoes, my posture, and filing it away for later use. Next to her, Victor looked different, stiffer, like he was performing a role in a play he hadn't fully memorized yet. "Mom," he said, standing to shake my hand. Shake my hand, like I was a business contact. "Thanks for coming." "Wouldn't miss it," I said, sitting down. Natalie launched into conversation immediately. She was good at it the way a chess player is good at openings. Every question designed to extract information while appearing friendly. "Victor tells me you're in sanitation," she said. The way she said sanitation, she might as well have said I clean toilets for a living. "Waste management," I corrected. "I own the company." "Oh, of course. Harper Waste Management." That smile again. Perfect teeth, empty eyes. It must have been so difficult starting from nothing. That's so humble. Humble. The word hung in the air like perfume that's a little too strong. The waiter came. Natalie ordered the most expensive steak without glancing at the price. Lobster tail on the side. A glass of wine that cost $40. Victor ordered the same thing she did. Exact same. Steak, lobster, wine. Like he couldn't make a decision without checking hers first. I got the ribeye and water. So tell me about the business, Natalie said, leaning forward like she genuinely cared. Victor mentioned you still work the routes sometimes. She tilted her head. That must be exhausting at your age. At my age, I was 71, not dead. I like staying involved, I said. Can't manage what you don't understand. How authentic, she said. Authentic, another knife wrapped in velvet. Most women your age would have retired by now. You must be tired all the time. Translation, you're old. Step aside. Victor shifted uncomfortably. Natalie, my mom built a really successful company. She has almost 300 employees. A flicker of something crossed his face. Was that defense? Was he actually defending me? Oh, I know, Natalie said. She touched his arm, possessive, like marking territory. It's very impressive. For a local business. Like Harper Waste was some mom-and-pop operation barely scraping by. I took a breath, held it, let it out slowly. And what about your family? I asked. Victor mentioned your father's in business too. Her smile got brighter, like someone had turned up the wattage. Oh yes, environmental consulting. Very prestigious. We work with corporations, government agencies. My father has connections all over Chicago. Sounds important, I said, flat as a pancake. It is, she sipped her wine. Victor and I were actually discussing how our family's businesses might complement each other. Waste management and environmental consulting, there's real synergy there. Synergy. God, I hated that word. Victor jumped in. We were thinking there could be partnership opportunities down the line. You know, modernize Harper Waste's approach. Victor tells me everything about the business, Natalie interrupted, smiling at me. How hands-on you are. How you still drive trucks sometimes. She paused like she was choosing her next word carefully. It's so quaint. Quaint. Another insult dressed up as a compliment. I watched her throughout dinner. The way she touched Victor constantly, arm, shoulder, hand marking territory. The way she answered questions I'd asked him. The way she steered every conversation back to her family, their connections, their world. And Victor, my son, sat there letting it happen, nodding along, smiling that tight, uncomfortable smile. He barely looked at me. Then her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Her face changed. Not dramatically, just enough for someone who was paying attention. The color drained slightly. Her jaw tightened. Excuse me, she said. I need to take this. She stepped away from the table, turned her back to us. I couldn't hear the words, but I heard the tone. Quiet. Submissive. A voice I hadn't heard from her all evening. Yes, Dad. I understand. I'll handle it. When she came back, her hand was trembling slightly under the table. She hid it by reaching for her wine glass. But I saw it. Victor saw it too. He took her hand under the table, squeezed it. And something in that moment, the trembling, the forced calm, the way she looked at Victor like he was her only safe place, made me wonder if Natalie Prescott wasn't just a predator. Maybe she was a weapon someone else was pointing. The bill came, $280. Natalie didn't reach for her purse. Victor pulled out a credit card, the one I was still paying for. I didn't say anything, just watched. Mrs. Harper, Natalie said as we stood to leave. Thank you so much for dinner. It was lovely getting to know the woman who raised Victor. She paused, tilted her head. You must be so proud of how far he's come. How far he's come. Away from me. Away from Harper. Away from everything I'd taught him. I drove home that night with my gut twisted in knots. Something was wrong. I couldn't name it, couldn't prove it, but I felt it deep in my bones, the same way I felt a storm coming before the sky changed color. The next morning I called Robert Callahan. 27 years we'd been friends. He was my lawyer, but more than that, he was someone I trusted with my life. Had trusted with my life back in the early days when every contract could have been a trap and every handshake could have been a con. Robert, I need you to look into someone for me. Who? Natalie Prescott, Victor's fiancée. Robert laughed. You're just being an overprotective mom, Alice. Maybe, I said. I stared out my kitchen window at the empty street. Morning sun hitting the pavement, making it look almost warm. Almost. She's not trying to impress me, Robert. She's trying to get rid of me. He sighed. Look, I'll ask around. But Alice, sometimes young couples just need space. Yeah, I said. Maybe. But I didn't believe it, not for a second. Let me tell you about Sophie Bennett. Because while my son was ashamed of me, there was a young woman who saw me differently. And in the end, she would mean more to me than my own blood. Her father, Howard Bennett, worked for me for 8 years. Good man, the kind you build a company around. He showed up early, stayed late, never complained. Drove routes, trained new hires, covered shifts when other guys called in sick. Howard wasn't just an employee. He was the backbone of the operation. In 2016, he got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. He didn't smoke, just bad luck. The universe rolling dice and landing on the worst possible number. The treatments were brutal. Chemo that left him hollowed out, radiation that burned him from the inside. His insurance covered some of it, but not nearly enough. The bills piled up like snow in a Chicago winter, slowly at first, then all at once. I found out when he missed 3 days of work. That wasn't like Howard. In 8 years, he'd called in sick twice. I went to his house. He answered the door looking like he'd aged 10 years in a week. Cheeks sunken, eyes that used to spark with humor, now flat and tired. "Ms. Harper." His voice was thin. "Sorry, I should have called." "What's going on, Howard?" He told me everything. The diagnosis, the debt. His daughter Sophie, 25 years old, trying to finish design school while working 2 jobs to help pay his medical bills. I didn't think twice. "Howard, you focus on getting better. We'll handle the rest." "Ma'am, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking, I'm telling." I called my insurance broker that night. Got Howard's medical bills covered. The ones insurance wouldn't touch, I paid out of pocket. Every last one. Howard lasted 6 more months. The cancer was too far gone by the time they caught it. He died on a Wednesday in March. Sophie was holding his hand. He left behind his daughter and about $30,000 in remaining debt. I paid it. All of it. Then I called Sophie, offered her a job at Harper Waste. Administrative work at first, but I told her if she wanted to finish design school, I'd cover the tuition. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was small and broken like glass that had been stepped on. "You don't owe us anything." "Your father gave me 8 years of loyalty," I said. "That means something to me. In my world, that means everything. That was 8 years ago. Now Sophie Bennett was 31 and my best operations manager. Sharp, efficient, loyal to the bone. It was a Thursday afternoon in late March when she knocked on my office door. 3 months before the wedding. "Alice got a minute?" "Always." She came in carrying her laptop and a stack of printouts. 8 years with me, and she still dressed practical, simple blouse, dark pants. No designer labels, no pretension. Her father's watch on her wrist. The only expensive thing she owned, and it was expensive because of what it meant, not what it cost. "I've been running numbers," she said, pulling up spreadsheets. "If we optimize routes in the northwest sector and shift 2 trucks to early morning pickup, we could increase efficiency by 12%. She turned the laptop toward me. Charts, projections, cost analyses. Revenue impact, $800,000 annually. I studied the numbers. "You sure did?" Ran it 3 times. The data is solid. "You're better at this than I ever was, Sophie." She smiled. "I learned from the best boss." We worked through the projections for 20 minutes. Route adjustments, fuel savings, driver scheduling. Sophie had thought of everything, even the impact on overtime costs and vehicle maintenance cycles. Then she hesitated. I knew that hesitation. It meant she wanted to say something that wasn't about spreadsheets. "Something on your mind?" I asked. "Victor's wedding." She paused. "How are you feeling about it?" I'd told Sophie some of it. Not everything. Not about the name change or Natalie's condescension, but enough that she could read between the lines. "Honestly, I'm worried." "About Natalie?" "Something doesn't sit right." Sophie nodded slowly. "Can I be honest, boss?" "Always." She set down her pen, looked at me directly. "From what you've told me, she sounds like she's using him. The way she talks about your family, about the business that's not love Alice. That's calculation. Maybe I'm just a jealous mother." "You're not jealous," Sophie said firmly. "You're protective. There's a difference. A big one." I looked at her, really looked at her. Sophie Bennett, who'd lost her father at 25, who'd spent 2 years after his death drinking too much, missing classes, almost drowning in grief. I'd pulled her out not by lecturing, not by throwing money at the problem, but by giving her responsibility, by trusting her when she didn't trust herself. She'd told me once over coffee in this same office, "You didn't save me with money, Alice. You saved me by believing I could do something worth doing. And I thought about Victor, who'd had everything handed to him, who'd never struggled, never lost, never had to rebuild from ashes. Victor doesn't know how lucky he is, I said quietly. Sophie's expression softened. People who grow up with everything sometimes can't see what matters. They think success is about the right name, the right address, the right people at your dinner table. She paused. But you taught me different. You showed me that real success is building something that lasts, something that helps people, something that matters when the lights go out and no one's watching. Your father would be proud of you, Sophie. Her eyes got wet. She blinked it back. Professional to the core. I hope so. I know so. Yeah, I did. Sophie lost her father at 25. I lost my husband at 44 when Victor was 8. Maybe that's why we understood each other. We both knew what it felt like to have the ground ripped out from under you. We both knew the value of loyalty because we'd both seen what happened when it was absent. Victor never learned that. He'd never lost anything, never had to fight for anything, never had to choose between groceries and dignity. And now he was throwing away the only name that ever meant anything for a woman who saw him as an investment. Boss, Sophie said, pulling me back. Whatever happens with Victor and Natalie, you know I'm here, right? Whatever you need. I reached across the desk and squeezed her hand. I know. Thank you, Sophie. She squeezed back, and something passed between us, something that didn't need words. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up when blood walks away. 3 weeks after my conversation with Sophie, mid-April, about 3 months before the wedding, the office was empty, just Diane and me, the overhead lights humming in the silence. Diane Walsh walked in carrying a folder. Not her usual monthly reports folder. This one was thicker, heavier, and the look on her face told me everything I needed to know before she said a word. She closed the door behind her. That was unusual. Diane never closed the door. Alice, she said quietly. She sat down across from me and placed the folder on the desk between us like it was radioactive. You need to see this. What is it? It's about the Prescotts. My stomach dropped. Tell me. Diane took a breath. In 19 years, I'd seen this woman handle IRS audits, employee lawsuits, and a near bankruptcy without flinching. Whatever was in that folder had shaken her. Prescott Environmental Solutions, she began. The company Richard Prescott runs. It's not what it seems. She pulled out a document. FBI letterhead. My eyes went straight to the highlighted sections. They've been under federal investigation for 8 months. Started last August. For what? Diane's voice dropped lower. Illegal waste brokering, permit fraud, money laundering, hazardous waste trafficking. She looked at me. Alice, they're not environmental consultants. They're criminals hiding behind a legitimate-looking front. I stared at the document. FBI seal at the top. Richard Prescott's name highlighted in yellow. Richard Prescott is facing 15 to 25 years in federal prison, Diane continued, if convicted. The room felt smaller. The humming lights felt louder. And Natalie? I asked quietly. Diane pulled out another set of papers. Credit reports, bank statements. Personal debt of $94,000. Credit cards maxed out. Personal loans. That Mercedes she drives 3 payments behind. That engagement ring Victor gave her, she picked it out herself and sent him the link. She paused. And this isn't her first time, Alice. What do you mean? 2 other relationships in the past 5 years. Both with men from wealthy families. Both ended when the men figured out what she was doing. Professional gold digger. The words formed in my mind before I could stop them. But there's more, Diane said. And she pulled out something I hadn't expected, a court filing from 2017. When Natalie was 22, she filed for a protective order against her father. I looked up. Richard. She withdrew it 3 days later. No explanation. Diane leaned forward. Alice, I think she's both. She's doing terrible things, but she might be doing them because she's terrified of her father. I sat with that for a moment. It didn't change what was happening. Didn't make it okay. But it added a layer I hadn't expected. Show me the rest, I said. Diane opened the next section. Emails. Printed exchanges between Natalie and Richard. Between Natalie and Victor. They're planning a merger, Diane said. Prescott Environmental with Harper Waste. The paperwork is already drafted. Once Victor marries into the family, they'll push for it. Make it seem natural, two family businesses coming together. And when the FBI comes knocking, Diane's expression darkened. All the liability transfers to Harper Waste. The criminal charges the fines, everything. We'll be the ones holding the bag. They're framing us. Worse, they're planning to claim you knew about it, that you were complicit. Richard and Natalie walk away clean, claiming they were deceived. You and Victor go to prison. Victor, the word came out hollow. Diane hesitated. Then she pulled out the last set of documents, the ones that would break me. Alice, her voice was barely above a whisper. Victor knows. What? He's part of it. She slid the papers across the desk. Emails from Victor's account, sent to Natalie. The first one dated 3 weeks ago. Mom will never suspect anything. She trusts me. When we're married, we can move forward with the merger. She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. My hands started shaking. Not the heart kind of shaking, the kind that comes when the earth opens beneath your feet. Another email 2 months earlier. My mom is stubborn, but I know how to handle her. I'm the only man in her life since Dad died. She won't deny me anything. I read that line 3 times. I'm the only man in her life since Dad died. She won't deny me anything. He wasn't just complicit. He was a co-conspirator, using my love for him as a weapon, using my grief over James, using everything I'd ever given him to destroy me. There's more, Diane said softly. In another email, Victor talks about selling Harper Waste after the merger goes through. $400 million. Split between him, Natalie, and Richard. You get nothing or you're in prison, so it doesn't matter. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. My son, my only child. The boy I'd raised alone for 27 years. The boy I'd starved myself to put through school. He was planning to destroy me. The tightness in my chest came back. Hard. I reached into my desk drawer, the one with the prescription bottle I kept hidden, and took a pill. Diane saw. Alice, her voice changed, sharpened with concern. What are you taking? Nothing. That's not nothing, is that? She leaned forward. Heart medication. Alice, how long have you, Diane? I looked at her. Whatever she saw in my eyes made her stop. Not now, please. She sat back. But the worry didn't leave her face. I stared at those emails for 2 hours after she left. Read them over and over. Each time the words cut a little deeper. Mom will never suspect anything. She trusts me. She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. Part of me, the mother part, the part that remembered holding him in the delivery room, his tiny fingers wrapped around mine, wanted to believe it wasn't real, wanted to believe the emails were faked or taken out of context, or that there was some explanation that would make it all okay. But I'd built a company from nothing, survived a recession that killed businesses 10 times my size. You don't do that by lying to yourself. The emails were real. My son was betraying me. And then sitting in that quiet office with the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant rumble of garbage trucks returning from their routes, I heard my mother's voice. Ruth Harper, dead 15 years now, but her voice, I'd never forget her voice. Alice, you've got one choice, sink or swim, and that boy is not going to pay for your mistakes. She'd said something like that to me once years ago in a different context. The night James died. When I was lying on the couch, unable to move, unable to think, unable to do anything but stare at the ceiling and wonder how I was supposed to keep breathing, she'd pulled me up by my collar, literally grabbed me and hauled me to my feet. Get up, she'd said. That boy needs his mother, so get up. I got up then. I'd get up now. I locked the documents in my desk drawer, picked up the phone. Robert, I said when he answered, I need to see you tonight. It's urgent. Tonight, Alice, it's almost 9. I know, but this can't wait. A pause. I could hear him thinking. What's going on? I'll explain in person. But Robert, bring everything you need for estate planning. Trusts, inheritance clauses, protection clauses. I took a breath. And bring paperwork for legal adoption. Dead silence. Adoption, Alice, what? Insurance, Robert. I said, I'm buying insurance. Before I tell you what happened next, I need to take you back. Because Victor didn't understand what he was throwing away. He never did. So let me show you what my son could never be bothered to see. I was born in 1953 on the south side of Chicago. Let me tell you about that because you need to understand what Victor was rejecting when he said the Harper name disgusted him. My father, Frank Harper, not Frank Moretti from the diner, a different Frank, drove a garbage truck for the city for 40 years. 40 years of 5 a.m. starts of Chicago winters that froze the hydraulics, and Chicago summers that turned the truck cab into an oven. My mother, Ruth, cleaned houses for families in the suburbs. Families who had swimming pools and 2-car garages while we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment that smelled like the cabbage she boiled every Sunday. We were poor, but we had something Victor never understood. Self-respect. Dad would come home every evening, grease under his fingernails, back aching so bad he'd lean against the doorframe for a full minute before coming inside. He'd wash up scrubbing his hands with that gritty orange soap until the black was almost gone, sit down at our small kitchen table, and eat dinner with us like a king. Never complained. Never apologized for what he did. Never once, not in 40 years, looked at his hands and felt shame. Honest work is honest work, he told me once when I was 12 and crying because a girl at school had called me a garbage kid. He knelt down, put his hands, those big, rough, permanently stained hands, on my shoulders. Alice, the people who look down on what we do, they couldn't last one day doing it. Not one day. Remember that. I remembered. I met James Harper in 1974. He was a nurse at County General Hospital. Night shift mostly. Gunshot wounds and car accidents and overdoses, the ugly side of Chicago that the tourists never saw. I was 21 working sanitation like my father, following his roots, learning the business from the ground up. Most men wouldn't have looked at me twice. A woman driving a garbage truck in 1974, you can imagine the comments, the looks, the things men said when they thought I couldn't hear. But James saw past the uniform, past the grease, past all of it. We met at a diner, not Frank Moretti's place. This was a different one, long gone now. I was sitting at the counter after a double shift, so tired I could barely hold my coffee cup. He sat down next to me, still in his scrubs, and ordered pie. "Rough night?" he asked. "Rough life," I said. He laughed. And that laugh, warm and real and completely without judgment, that's what got me. We got married that same year. Small church on the south side. Her dress was borrowed from her sister. My suit was rented. 20 people. No fancy reception, just cake and coffee in the church basement. Someone's aunt brought a casserole. It was perfect. Victor was born in 1989. Late in life for us, I was 36, James was 38. We'd given up on having kids. Then surprise, I held him in the delivery room, this tiny screaming thing with his father's chin and my stubborn forehead, and I made myself a promise. He would have a better life than mine. He would never know what it felt like to be hungry, never know what it felt like to wear shoes with holes and pretend it didn't matter. That promise, I kept it. Maybe too well. James died in 1997. Car accident. Night shift at the hospital. Some drunk driver ran a red light at the intersection of Ashland and 47th. James was driving home after 12 hours of stitching up other people's emergencies. He never got to stitch up his own. Victor was 8 years old. I was 44. The insurance company sent a check. $87,500. That was what my husband's life was worth, apparently. $87,500. 3 days after the funeral, I was sitting on the couch. Couldn't move. Couldn't think. Victor was at my mother's house. The apartment was empty and silent and smelled like the flowers people had sent, lilies mostly, which I've hated ever since. My mother came over, found me there. She didn't say anything at first. Just sat down next to me on that old couch and put her hand on mine. We sat like that for maybe 5 minutes. Then she grabbed me by the collar and pulled me up. "Alice," she said. Her voice was hard as concrete. "You've got one choice, sink or swim, and that boy is not going to pay for your mistakes. I can't. Your father drove a truck for 40 years to put food on our table. James worked nights to save strangers' lives. You think they'd want you sitting here feeling sorry for yourself?" I didn't answer. "Get up," she said. "That boy needs his mother, so get up." So I got up. I took that insurance check, and I bet everything on myself. Bought 2 beat-up garbage trucks from a guy in Cicero who was going out of business. Hired 3 men who were willing to work for a woman not easy to find in 1997. Victor did his homework in my office every night while I made phone calls, chased contracts, begged for business. I'd tuck him into a sleeping bag on the office couch, then go back to the desk and work until 2 in the morning. It was brutal. The first year, 3 companies refused to give me contracts because I was a woman. One guy, I'll never forget this, looked me dead in the eye and said, "Lady, go home and take care of your kid." I didn't say anything. 2 years later, when his company went bankrupt, I bought his contracts. Every single one. Didn't say anything then either. Didn't need to. Over the years, the company grew. I hired good people, treated them right, built something that mattered. And through it all, I gave Victor everything. Private school with kids from wealthy families, $60,000 a year. 4 years of college at a top university, $200,000. A condo in Gold Coast when he graduated, $1.35 million. A car, $52,000. Monthly allowance so he wouldn't have to struggle, $2,800. Everything I never had. Everything I dreamed of for him. But somewhere along the way, Victor stopped seeing me as his mother. He started seeing me as an embarrassment. When he was 16, he stopped inviting friends to the house. Said it was too far from where they lived. But I knew. He was ashamed of the South Side. Ashamed of the modest house. Ashamed of the mother who came home smelling like work. When he was 20, he stopped mentioning what I did for a living. My mom's in business, he'd say. Never the name, never the industry. When he was 30, he stopped visiting unless he needed money. And he always needed money. I kept giving it. Kept hoping. Kept telling myself it was a phase that he'd come around, that someday he'd see. He never did. The night I read those emails, I didn't sleep. I sat in my office until 9 o'clock, staring at the evidence Diane had gathered, reading my son's words over and over like a prisoner reading her sentence. Then I picked up the phone. "Robert," I said, "I need you to come to the office, tonight." "Alice, I know what time it is. How fast can you get here?" A pause. Robert Callahan had known me for 27 years. He knew the difference between Alice who needs advice and Alice who's already made up her mind. 30 minutes, he said. "Good. Bring everything you need for estate planning, trusts, inheritance clauses, protection clauses, and bring the adoption forms. I'll have coffee ready." At 9:40, headlights swept across the parking lot. Robert's black sedan pulled up next to my truck. He climbed out carrying a leather briefcase, moving fast for 69. Silver hair, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, the kind of face that looked like it had been carved by years of argument and negotiation. "All right, Alice." He set the briefcase on my desk and sat down. "Talk to me." I didn't waste time. Slid the folder across the desk. Robert read for 20 minutes in silence. FBI documents. Financial records. The emails, especially the emails. Victor's words in black and white, plotting to destroy his own mother. Pages turning. Robert's occasional sharp intake of breath. His pen tapping against the legal pad where he was already taking notes. Finally, he looked up. His expression had changed. The easygoing friend was gone. This was Robert, the lawyer. "Alice, this is prosecutable. Federal crimes." "I know. The FBI will want this evidence." "I know that too. So why am I looking at it instead of federal agents?" "Because I want something else first." I met his eyes. "I want him to learn a lesson, Robert. A real one. The kind he can't run from. The kind that sticks." Robert pulled out his legal pad. "What are you thinking?" "My will. I want to change it. And I want to make sure Victor can never touch Harper Waste." "Go on." "He's changing his name at the wedding. Victor Prescott Harper. Putting their name first." I paused. "If he does that, I want him to lose everything." Robert nodded. Started writing. "A conditional inheritance clause. You have every legal right to set terms for your estate. Can we make it automatic? No appeals. No way around it. We can make it ironclad." He looked up. "But I want to do something the original will didn't have. I want you to get a psychiatric evaluation." "Excuse me." "Independent assessment. Proves you were of completely sound mind when you signed. Makes it virtually impossible for anyone to contest later by claiming you were confused or coerced or senile." I wasn't going to say that. But Victor's lawyers would. Robert held my gaze. Yes, they would. "Fine. Schedule the evaluation. Whatever it takes to make this bulletproof." We spent the next hour drafting the language. Robert knew estate law the way I knew garbage routes, every turn, every obstacle, every shortcut. The core clause was simple and devastating. Any direct descendant who legally changes, replaces, or subordinates the Harper surname shall automatically and irrevocably forfeit all inheritance rights to the estate business assets and financial holdings. "That's airtight," Robert said. "But what happens to Harper Waste when Victor's out?" "Sophie Bennett, my operations manager." Robert raised an eyebrow. You're sure? Her father worked for me 8 years. When he died, I helped Sophie through school. Gave her a chance when she had nothing. She's been loyal, competent, and she understands what this company means, what it really means. You trust her more than your own son. That wouldn't be hard at this point. Robert made more notes. His pen moved fast, precise. Here's what I recommend. 55% of company shares to Sophie. 45% to a charitable foundation. Keeps the company stable while doing real good. The James Harper Foundation, I said. For families who've lost someone. Medical bills, funeral costs, college tuition, the things insurance doesn't cover. The things that drown people when they're already drowning. Robert's expression softened. Just for a second. Then the lawyer came back. James would have liked that. Yeah, I said. He would have. Now, if we're giving Sophie 55% of a multi-million-dollar company, we need to make it bulletproof. Victor could contest. Claim you weren't in your right mind. Claim Sophie manipulated you. How do we prevent that? Adopt her, legally. Adult adoption under Illinois law, it's straightforward. A petition, a hearing, Sophie's consent. 2 to 3 weeks to process through the courts. Once it's done, she has the same legal standing as Victor. Equal footing. Something settled in my chest. A quiet certainty like a key turning in a lock. Sophie Bennett Harper, I said. Exactly. Robert pulled out different forms. I'll draft the adoption papers tonight. But Alice, there's something you need to understand. I waited. If Victor backs out, if he doesn't change his name, the clause never triggers. He keeps his inheritance. This only works if he walks into it willingly. He'll walk into it, I said. He's too proud not to. And if he does, there's no going back. This will be irrevocable. You'll be cutting off your only son. I looked at the photo on my desk. Victor at 8 years old, first day of 3rd grade, missing 2 front teeth, grinning like the world was made of candy. Something in me cracked. Robert, I said, and my voice came out smaller than I wanted. Am I doing the right thing? He studied me for a long moment. You're protecting yourself, Alice. I'm cutting off my son. He cut you off first, when he called your name an embarrassment, when he planned to put you in prison. Robert leaned forward. You're just making it official. I picked up the pen. My hand shook. I stared at the signature line, thought about the boy in the photo, the baby I'd held in the delivery room, the teenager who'd asked me to teach him how to drive in the truck, the real truck, Mom, the big one. Then I thought about the emails. Mom will never suspect anything. She trusts me. The boy I'd raised was gone. The man sitting in that Gold Coast condo, plotting with criminals to steal my life's work, that man was a stranger. I signed. Robert called in 2 associates who didn't know me or my family, independent witnesses. A notary arrived 20 minutes later. We signed, dated, sealed. The will stays sealed until triggered, Robert explained. Attorney-client privilege. Victor won't know until he changes his name. And by then it'll be too late. Robert walked me to the door. Past midnight now. The parking lot was empty except for my truck and his sedan. When are you telling Sophie? He asked. Soon, before the wedding. She needs to understand what she's agreeing to. And Victor, I looked out at the night. Chicago in April. Cold enough to see your breath, warm enough to pretend spring was coming. He'll find out at the wedding, I said, in front of everyone, in the same room where he tried to humiliate me. Robert shook his head slightly. Not disapproval, more like the look a man gives when he realizes he's standing next to someone more dangerous than he thought. Remind me never to cross you, Alice. You've been loyal for 27 years, Robert. You've got nothing to worry about. I drove home through empty streets. The city was quiet. But my mind was a storm. The documents were signed. The trap was set. All Victor had to do was walk into it. And I knew he would. Because my son had never faced a real consequence in his entire life. I'd made sure of that. Protected him from everything. Shielded him from every hard lesson, every painful truth, every moment that might have taught him that actions have prices. That was ending now. I pulled into my driveway, cut the engine, sat there in the dark. The house was quiet. The street was quiet. The world was quiet. But inside me, something was wide awake. I reached into the glove compartment, took another pill, the second one today. I wasn't supposed to take 2. The tightness eased, slowly, I thought about James, what he'd say if he could see all this. He'd be heartbroken not just at Victor, but at me, at what I was about to do. But James was also the man who'd taught me that love without boundaries isn't love. It's surrender. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered to the empty truck. "But I have to fight this one." Nobody answered. I went inside, locked the door, sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd fed Victor breakfast for 18 years, where James and I used to sit after Victor went to bed drinking decaf and planning a future that never came. And I waited. 4 weeks until the wedding. 4 weeks until my son learned what the Harper name really meant. 2 weeks after signing those documents with Robert, the adoption papers came through. Processed by the court, stamped official. All I needed was Sophie's signature. It was a Friday afternoon in mid-May. The yard was winding down for the weekend. Trucks rumbling back from their routes, drivers clocking out the familiar end-of-week rhythm I'd listened to for 27 years. I found Sophie in her office, hunched over next week's schedules, pen between her teeth, laptop open to 3 different spreadsheets. "Sophie," I said from the doorway, "can you stay a few minutes after everyone leaves? I need to talk to you." She looked up. I saw the flash of worry cross her face the way it always did when I asked for something outside the routine. "Is everything okay? Did I mess up the efficiency report because I double-checked the—" "You're not in trouble," I said. "Just stay, please." Of course. An hour later, the building was empty, just the two of us and the hum of the overhead lights. Sophie came to my office. She walked in the way she always did, straight-backed professional hands clasped in front of her, like a student reporting to the principal. 9 years she'd worked for me. 9 years of proving herself every single day. And she still thought I might fire her. "Sit down, Sophie." She sat, perched on the edge of the chair like she might need to bolt. I'd rehearsed this conversation for 2 weeks, practiced the words in my head while driving routes, while lying awake at 3 in the morning, while sitting in Frank's diner, staring at coffee I wasn't drinking. Now, sitting across from her, every rehearsed word disappeared. "I need to ask you something important," I said. Sophie nodded, still anxious. "I want to legally adopt you, make you my daughter, Sophie Bennett Harper." She froze. Not a small freeze, a full stop, like someone had pressed pause on a movie. Her eyes went wide. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. "I've already drawn up the papers with my lawyer," I continued. "They've been processed through the courts. Everything's legal. All that's left is your signature." I paused. "If you want to." Sophie stared at me for what felt like a full minute. Then her eyes filled. "Alice, I don't deserve this." "Don't deserve it." I leaned forward. "Sophie, you've earned this. Every day for 9 years. But Victor," her voice cracked on his name. "He's your son. Your real son." Something shifted in my chest. That word, real. "Victor made his choice," I said. "He doesn't want the Harper name. You do." "I don't understand. Why me? Why—" "Your father, Howard, was one of the best men I ever knew. When he got sick, I didn't help because I was generous. I helped because that's what family does." I held her gaze. "And when he died, I hired you for the same reason. Not charity. Family." Sophie wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, professional to the core even when she was breaking apart. "You gave me a chance when no one else would," she whispered. "And you proved yourself 100 times over. I'd be a fool not to see that." She looked down at her hands. Her father's watch caught the light. Can I have one night to think about it?" "Of course." She came back the next morning. I was at my desk pretending to read a report. I'd been staring at the same paragraph for 20 minutes. Sophie walked in. No hesitation this time. She stood in front of my desk, shoulders squared, chin up. "I want to be a Harper," she said. "I want to carry that name." Something loosened in my chest. Something that had been coiled tight since January, since that engagement party, since my son looked through me like I was glass. "Then let's make it official." I pulled out the papers Robert had prepared, set them on the desk between us. Sophie read through them slowly, carefully. Her hands trembled as she turned the pages. When she reached the signature line, she looked at me. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." She signed. Her handwriting was neat, precise, like everything she did. Sophie Bennett. Soon to be Sophie Bennett Harper. I signed below her name. Dated it. It was done. Sophie stood, came around the desk, and before I could react, she hugged me. Not a polite hug, not the kind you give a boss or a colleague. A real hug, tight and desperate, and full of everything words couldn't carry. I hugged her back, held on longer than I expected to, longer than I planned. "If we're doing this," I said when she finally pulled away, "you should probably stop calling me boss." Sophie laughed through her tears. A real laugh, messy and wet and beautiful. "What should I call you?" I thought about Victor, about all the times he'd called me Mom before he started pretending I didn't exist, before he decided I wasn't worth introducing to his friends. "Call me Mom," I said quietly. Her face crumpled. "Mom?" she whispered, testing the word, feeling its weight. "Yeah," I said. My own voice was rough. "That's right." She hugged me again. I gained a daughter that day, a real one, someone who understood what the Harper name actually meant. And in 6 weeks at a wedding I was paying for, I'd make sure everyone else understood it too. 1 month before the wedding, Frank's Diner, I gave Victor one final opportunity to prove me wrong. One last chance to show me the boy I'd raised was still in there somewhere. He failed. I chose Frank's Diner on purpose. The place where I'd eaten breakfast for 20 years. Where Victor used to sit across from me as a kid drawing on paper napkins with crayons while I drank coffee and read the morning paper. I thought maybe the place itself would remind him, would pull something out of him, some memory, some feeling that Natalie and her father hadn't managed to kill yet. I arrived at noon, ordered coffee, waited. Victor showed up 20 minutes late. "Sorry, Mom." He slid into the booth. No explanation. Just sorry, like the word was a skeleton key that opened every lock. He was wearing a suit that probably cost $3,000. Italian cut, perfectly tailored. He looked at the diner, at the cracked vinyl seats, the laminated menus, the coffee stains on the Formica table like he was slumming it. Frank came over with menus. "Your boy," Frank asked me, though he already knew. "Yeah." Frank handed Victor a menu. "What can I get you to drink, son?" "Nah." Victor barely glanced at him. "Water's fine." Frank's expression didn't change, but I saw the tightening around his eyes. 20 years of serving working people had given Frank a radar for disrespect. "How are the wedding plans?" I asked. "Good. Expensive." Victor checked his phone, scrolled, put it down, picked it up again. "But Natalie wants everything perfect." "I'm happy to help with costs." "You are helping." A pause. "Thanks." Flat, like thanking a vending machine. We ordered. Victor got a salad, kept checking his phone every few minutes, smiling at texts he didn't share. Then he leaned back, put on his reasonable son face. "Actually, Mom, there's something I wanted to talk to you about." "What's that?" "Your retirement." I took a sip of coffee. Steady hand, steady voice. "I'm not retiring." "I know, but maybe you should think about it. You're 72. You've worked so hard your whole life. Don't you want to enjoy yourself?" "I enjoy my work." "But Mom," that tone patient, condescending, like explaining something to a child. "You can't do this forever. The body breaks down. Wouldn't it be nice to travel, relax, let someone younger take the wheel? Someone like you." "Well, yeah." He leaned forward, eyes bright, rehearsed. "I'm your son. I could restructure things, bring in new partnerships. Natalie's family could really help us grow. They've got connections in environmental consulting, real expertise." There it was, the pitch. "What kind of connections?" I asked. "People who understand the industry. Natalie's father has worked with major corporations, government agencies. He could introduce us to clients we'd never reach otherwise." His phone rang. Natalie's name lit up the screen. "Sorry, 1 second." He walked outside. I watched through the window. Victor pacing on the sidewalk, one hand gesturing animated alive in a way he never was when talking to me. Frank refilled my coffee, set the pot down, looked through the window at Victor, then back at me. "That's your boy," he said again. Different this time. Softer. "Yeah." Frank didn't say anything else. Didn't need to. Victor came back. "Sorry. Wedding stuff." "Victor," I said. "What happens to the Harper name?" He blinked. "What do you mean?" "The company. It's called Harper Waste Management. Would you keep that?" He hesitated. Just a beat, but I caught it. A micro-expression. The slightest twitch of his jaw. "Maybe rebrand," he said carefully. "Something more modern, but we can talk about that later. My coffee tasted like ashes. The check came. Victor didn't reach for it. I paid. Like I always paid. Like I'd been paying for everything his entire life. Outside, Victor gave me a quick hug, the kind you give someone you're trying to get away from. "Think about it, Mom," he said. "You've earned a rest." "I'll think about it," he smiled. "I knew you'd come around. Love you, Mom." He walked to his car, drove away. I stood in the parking lot watching his taillights disappear. Frank came out, wiped his hands on his apron. "You okay, Alice?" "Yeah." "That boy." Frank shook his head slowly. "He don't see you. Does he?" "No," I said. "He doesn't." That night the chest pains came back, worse than before. Not the gentle squeeze I'd grown used to. This was a fist clenching hard, holding on. I sat on the edge of my bed, one hand pressed against my sternum, breathing through my teeth. It lasted 7 minutes. Felt like 7 hours. When it passed, I drove to the emergency room. Alone. 2 in the morning, streets empty, every stoplight a small eternity. The doctor, young guy, probably 30, the kind of doctor who still believed he could fix everything, ran tests. EKG, blood work, ultrasound. He came back looking like he'd aged 5 years. "Mrs. Harper, your heart is weakening. Significantly. If you don't have surgery within the next 6 months, the risk of a major cardiac event is..." He paused, chose his words. "Very high." "How high?" "High enough that I'd strongly recommend you reduce stress immediately and schedule the procedure as soon as..." "I'll think about it," I said. He stared at me. "Mrs. Harper, this isn't something you think about. This is..." I said I'll think about it. "Thank you, doctor." I drove home in the dark. Didn't tell anyone. Not Diane, not Robert, not Sophie, because if they knew they'd try to stop me. They'd tell me to rest, to let it go, to let Victor and the Prescotts win. And I couldn't do that. Not with 4 weeks left. 4 weeks until the wedding. 4 weeks until my son learned the truth. If my heart was Saturday. Early July, hottest day of the summer. The kind of Chicago heat that rises off the pavement in waves, makes the air shimmer, turns the city into a slow-cooking oven. I arrived at the hotel at 4 o'clock. Downtown Chicago. Crystal chandeliers in the lobby. 200 guests. Valet parking. A red carpet at the entrance. An actual red carpet like this was the Oscars instead of a wedding. I wore a new suit. Bought it specifically for today. Dark blue, well-fitted, nothing flashy. I'd had my hair done that morning at the salon on 53rd Street, where I'd been going for 30 years. I still felt out of place walking through those marble corridors. Celeste Beaumont, the wedding planner, intercepted me. Clipboard in one hand, earpiece in the other, moving with the controlled urgency of an air traffic controller. "Mrs. Harper, you're at..." She checked her chart. "Table 14. Table 14. "Not the head table?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Her smile was professional, practiced, and completely empty. "Oh, that's reserved for the bride's immediate family and the couple's inner circle." Table 14 was in the back corner of the ballroom, behind a decorative pillar, the kind of placement that said everything about where I ranked in my son's world. My table-mates' distant relatives Victor barely knew, and a couple of high school friends he hadn't spoken to in 15 years. At the head table, raised on a platform center of the room, draped in white flowers, there was an empty chair. The father of the groom's chair. The mother of the groom's chair. My chair. Empty. Sophie arrived 20 minutes later, found me at table 14 and sat down beside me. "Mom," the word still sounded new, precious. "This isn't right." "It's fine," I said. Let them have their moment. Until when, I checked my watch. Soon. The ceremony was beautiful. I'll give them that. 5:30. Ballroom transformed. White flowers cascading from every surface. Candles flickering. A string quartet playing something classical Pachelbel maybe. The kind of music that's designed to make you feel things whether you want to or not. Victor stood at the altar in a custom tuxedo. $5,000 easy. He looked handsome. He looked like his father. That's what hurt the most. Natalie walked down the aisle in a dress that cost $15,000. I knew because I'd seen the invoice. Paid for it, too. Along with the flowers, the catering, the venue, the photographer, the string quartet, and the red carpet nobody needed. They exchanged vows. Rings. Kissed. 200 people applauded. I sat at table 14 behind the pillar and watched my son marry a woman who was helping her father plan to put me in prison. Sophie squeezed my hand once. I squeezed back. The reception began at 6:30. French cuisine, 3 courses, wine pairings. I barely touched my food. I watched the head table. Victor and Natalie at the center glowing, orbiting each other. Richard Prescott to Natalie's right, silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of calm that comes from knowing you've rigged the game. Natalie's mother, Eleanor, sat at the far end. I watched Eleanor. She hadn't smiled once all evening. Hadn't spoken to anyone. Her hands stayed in her lap, motionless, like a woman sitting in a waiting room for news she already knew was bad. Every time Richard spoke, Eleanor looked away. She was afraid of him. It was written all over her, in the set of her shoulders, in the way she flinched when his voice got too loud, in the way she held her wine glass without drinking from it. I recognized that fear. I'd seen it in women who came to me looking for work after leaving bad situations. Women who'd spent years making themselves small so someone else could feel big. Eleanor Prescott wasn't celebrating her daughter's wedding. She was enduring it. At 7:30, the speeches began. Richard stood first, tapped his champagne glass with a silver spoon. The room fell silent. "Today," he said, his voice carrying with practiced authority, "we welcome Victor into the Prescott family, a family built on tradition, on excellence, on legacy." Applause, nods, smiles. Natalie went next. "I want to thank my incredible family. The Prescotts have given me everything: a foundation, a name, a future. And I'm so grateful that Victor wants to be part of that." More applause. Then Victor took the microphone. My heart, my broken, failing, stubborn heart, started beating faster. "I have an announcement," he said, grinning, that salesman's grin. "Something I'm really excited to share." The room leaned forward. "As of this morning, I have officially and legally changed my name." The AV tech paid for by me brought up an image on the screen behind Victor. A legal name change certificate, official stamps, signatures. Victor Prescott Harper. Prescott first, Harper second. "This is my tribute to Natalie's family," Victor continued. "The people who welcomed me with open arms and showed me what it means to belong to something bigger than yourself." The room erupted. 200 people standing, clapping, raising glasses. Someone near the front called out, "That's beautiful." Natalie kissed Victor. Richard stood and shook his hand. Photographers' cameras flashed like lightning. I sat at table 14, behind the pillar, watching my son celebrate, erasing my name. Sophie looked at me. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were fire. "Mom!" I stood up. The applause was still going when I started walking. Slow, steady, like I had all the time in the world. The first person to notice was one of Victor's old friends at my table. He nudged the person next to him. Then someone else turned. Then another. Conversations died. Heads swiveled. The applause faltered. Then stopped. 200 people watching a 72-year-old woman in a blue suit walk from the back corner of a ballroom toward the front. Something about the way I moved, unhurried, deliberate, inevitable, made them go quiet. Victor saw me. His face went white. "What?" he started. Natalie grabbed his arm, fingernails digging in. "What is she doing?" Richard Prescott half rose from his chair. His eyes narrowed, calculating, wondering if he could stop what was already in motion. Too late. I reached the front, picked up the microphone from the DJ stand. The screen behind me still showed Victor's name change certificate. I turned to face the crowd. 200 faces, 200 phones already rising. "Good evening, everyone." My voice was steady. Steady as the trucks that rolled out of my yard every morning at 5 a.m. Steady as the woman who'd built an empire from an insurance check and 2 broken-down garbage trucks. "I'm Alice Harper, mother of the groom. Thank you all for coming to celebrate my son's wedding." I paused. "The wedding I paid for." Uncomfortable silence. A few nervous laughs. Someone coughed. "Now, Victor just made a very important announcement about his name, and I think it's only fair that I make one too." Victor's face wasn't just white anymore. It was gray. "Mom," he started. I held up one hand. He fell silent. "You see," I continued, "there are some things about the Prescott family that I think everyone here should know." I let the words land, watched them ripple through the room like a stone dropped in still water. Prescott Environmental Solutions, the company Richard Prescott runs, is currently under FBI investigation for environmental crimes. Gasps, whispers, heads turning toward Richard. Richard shot to his feet. This is outrageous. Sit down, Richard. Something in my voice, something cold and final and absolutely certain, made him freeze. He sat. Richard Prescott is facing federal charges: illegal hazardous waste trafficking, permit fraud, money laundering, racketeering. I let each word hit separately like nails being driven. The FBI has been investigating for 8 months. He's looking at 15 to 25 years in federal prison. The room erupted, voices overlapping. Richard trying to push toward the exit, but guests were blocking the aisles. Phones out, recording. And Natalie, I looked at my son's bride. $94,000 in personal debt. Credit cards maxed, personal loans defaulted. That Mercedes in the parking lot 3 payments behind. That dress she's wearing financed over 18 months. Natalie's face contorted. You have no right. They had a plan, I said, talking over her. Marry my son, merge their failing criminal enterprise with my company. And when the FBI came knocking, they'd pin their crimes on me. On us. On Harper. I nodded to the AV tech. The same AV tech I'd paid and tipped generously that morning. He connected my laptop to the projector. Victor's emails filled the screen. Mom will never suspect anything. She trusts me. She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. The room exploded. Oh my God. Are you seeing this? Is someone recording? Phones everywhere, pointed at me, at the screen, at Victor's gray face. I want you all to know something, I said. 6 months ago, I changed my will. The room went quiet again. The sudden kind of quiet, the kind that comes before a verdict. Any descendant who changes or subordinates the Harper name automatically forfeits all inheritance rights. Irrevocable, non-negotiable. I looked at my son. Victor just triggered that clause. He gets nothing. Mom! Victor lunged forward. 2 hotel security guards, the ones I'd hired and briefed that morning, stepped in. Held him back. Professional. Firm. Not rough, but not gentle either. Sophie, I said. Come here, sweetheart. Sophie stood from table 14, walked to the front. Every eye in the ballroom tracked her, this woman they'd never seen before, in her simple dress, her father's watch on her wrist, walking through 200 strangers like she'd been doing it her whole life. She reached me. I put my arm around her shoulders. This is Sophie Bennett Harper, my legally adopted daughter. She will inherit 55% of Harper Waste Management. Sophie stood beside me, head high, back straight. She earned the Harper name, I said. She didn't run from it. The remaining 45% goes to the James Harper Foundation, a charity named after my late husband, Victor's father, the man who would be heartbroken to see what his son has become. I looked at Victor, really looked at him. Victor, you said Harper was a working-class name. You were right. It is. I paused. And you were never strong enough to carry it. The room detonated. Natalie spun on Victor, screaming, You said she'd never find out. You promised me. Shut up, Natalie. Don't you tell me to shut up. This is your fault. Richard was trying to leave. Guests blocked him, not on purpose, just the natural chaos of 200 people all trying to see what was happening at once. Phones recording everything. Someone was live streaming. And in the middle of it all, I saw Eleanor Prescott. She was still sitting at the head table, motionless while everything around her collapsed into chaos. She wasn't screaming, wasn't crying, wasn't trying to escape. She was looking at me, and she nodded. Small, almost invisible. The kind of nod you'd miss if you weren't watching for it. But I was watching, and I saw it, and I understood. I handed the microphone back to the DJ. Thank you, I said. Enjoy your evening. I took Sophie's hand. Let's go, sweetheart. We're done here. We walked through the crowd. People parted like water. Some faces showed shock. Some showed disgust, but not at me. At Victor. At the Prescotts. A woman from Natalie's side said loud enough for half the room to hear, I always knew that family was rotten. Behind us, Victor was shouting, Mom, you can't do this to me. I didn't look back. We reached the ballroom doors, stepped through. The heavy doors swung shut behind us, muffling the chaos to a dull roar. The hotel corridor was cool and quiet. Our heels clicked on the marble floor. Sophie looked at me. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. Are you okay? I thought about it. Really thought about it. About Victor in there. His perfect wedding destroyed his perfect plan, exposed his perfect new name worthless. About Natalie screaming accusations. About Richard trapped by his own guests. About Eleanor's quiet nod. About James. About what he'd think. What he'd want. Yeah, I said. I'm okay. We walked out into the Chicago night. July heat, city lights, traffic sounds the smell of lake water and exhaust. My truck was in the parking lot. 20 years old. Dented. Rusty. The left taillight still held on with duct tape. Sophie looked at it and laughed. A real laugh, the kind that breaks the tension like sunlight through storm clouds. Seriously, Mom, you just publicly destroyed the Prescotts, and you're driving home in that? This truck is paid for, I said, and it's mine, just like the Harper name. I started the engine. It coughed once, like it always did, then caught. As we pulled out of the lot, I could see people streaming out of the hotel entrance. Phones still up, still recording, still posting. By morning, it would be everywhere. I reached into the center console, found the pill bottle, shook one out, swallowed it dry before Sophie could notice. My heart was hammering, not just adrenaline. The real thing, the broken thing inside my chest reminding me it was still there, still failing, still running out of time. Not yet, I told it. Not yet. Where are we going? Sophie asked. Frank's Diner, I said. I'm hungry, and I need coffee. Sophie smiled, leaned back in the passenger seat, rested her head against the window. Best idea I've heard all night. I drove through Chicago, past the fancy hotels and the expensive restaurants and the red carpets and the crystal chandeliers. Back to the South Side, back to cracked vinyl booths and laminated menus and coffee that cost $1.50. Back home. The morning after the wedding, I woke up to 41 missed calls. All from Victor. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd fed him cereal every morning for 18 years, where James and I used to drink decaf after he went to bed and watch the screen light up again. Victor, Natalie, a number I didn't recognize. Victor again. I powered the phone off and made coffee. The video had gone viral overnight. Someone at the wedding, probably dozens of someones, had posted clips to every platform that would take them. By Sunday morning, it was everywhere. Mother exposes son's betrayal at wedding reception. Chicago businesswoman's shocking speech goes viral. Wedding from hell, mother of the groom drops bombshell. 2 million views in 48 hours. The comment section was a war zone of praise and pity and people who had opinions about a family they'd never met. This woman is a legend. I'm crying. Someone hug this mother. Best wedding speech in history. My face was on the local news. Channel 5 ran it at noon, Channel 7 at 6. A reporter from the Tribune left 3 voicemails. They called me a hero. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a woman who'd just amputated her own arm to save the rest of her body. The surgery was necessary. That didn't mean it didn't hurt. By Monday, the consequences hit like a freight train. Victor called 63 times. I knew because I checked the blocked call log before deleting it. His texts escalated through the day like a fever climbing. Morning, Mom, please. I need to talk to you. Afternoon. You're ruining my life. Do you understand that? Evening. I'll sue you. I swear to God I'll sue you for everything. I blocked his number. Permanently. Natalie's lawyer contacted Victor with divorce papers on Tuesday. Grounds fraud and misrepresentation. She claimed Victor had promised her millions, that the marriage was based on lies. She kept the Gold Coast condo. The deed had been transferred to her name a week before the wedding. Smart girl. Terrible person, but smart. Richard fired Victor from Prescott Properties by email. Not even a phone call, just an HR notice. Effective immediately due to reputational damage to the firm. Victor tried other companies. Real estate firms. Property management groups. Commercial developers. Nobody would touch him. The video was too public. His name, Victor Prescott Harper, was now permanently linked to fraud, betrayal, and a mother's heartbreak broadcast to 2 million strangers. Friday afternoon, he showed up at Harper Waste. Ray Thompson stopped him at the gate. Ray was 61, built like a refrigerator, and had been guarding that gate for 14 years. Sorry, Victor. Ray's voice was firm but not unkind. Boss says no visitors. Ray, come on. Victor's voice cracked. 5 minutes. That's all I need. 5 minutes with my mom. Can't do it. Orders are orders. I watched from my office window, second floor behind the glass. Victor stood in the parking lot, keys dangling from one hand, the other hand pressed against the back of his neck like he was trying to hold his own head up. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. Not the small he was afraid of, the kind that comes from Italian suits and Swiss watches. The real kind. The kind that comes from realizing you've destroyed the only thing that mattered. I turned away from the window. Sophie handled the media. Every reporter got the same response: Harper Waste Management has no comment at this time. Every email got the same auto-reply. She didn't flinch, didn't waver. The employees talked, of course they did. But they stayed loyal. They knew what Victor had tried to do. Word travels fast in a company of 287 people. That week I met with Robert. "The will is airtight," he said. "Victor filed a contestation through his lawyer, but it won't hold. The psychiatric evaluation sealed it. You were of sound mind, independently verified. The name change clause is crystal clear. He triggered it voluntarily. Case closed." "Good." Robert studied me. "How do you feel?" "Empty," I admitted. "Not like I won, just empty." "That's grief," Robert said quietly. "You lost your son this week, Alice. Not literally, but you did." I didn't argue. He was right. That Sunday night I sat alone in my living room and watched the viral video for the first time. There I was, 72 years old, blue suit, standing at a DJ booth in a hotel ballroom, microphone in hand, dismantling my son's life in front of 200 witnesses. The comments called it justice. It didn't feel like justice. It felt like surgery without anesthesia. I closed the laptop, took my heart medication, sat in the dark, and waited for whatever came next. 1 week after the wedding, Sunday afternoon, 3 people on my porch: Victor, Natalie, Richard, standing there like they had a right to be, like showing up uninvited was something reasonable people did. I looked through the window first. Across the street, Mrs. Patterson's curtains twitched. South Side Chicago, everyone knows everyone else's business. I opened the door, stood in the frame, didn't step aside. "Alice," Richard said, smooth, controlled, boardroom voice. "We need to talk." "No," I said. "We don't." Victor stepped forward. He looked terrible, unshaved, wrinkled shirt, dark circles carved under his eyes like someone had scooped out the flesh with a spoon. "Mom, please, 5 minutes." "Natalie's divorcing me," he said. "I don't have a job. I don't have anywhere to go." "Sounds like your problem." "I'm your son." "Are you—" I crossed my arms. "Because last I checked, you're Victor Prescott Harper now. The Harper part's just decoration. Isn't that what you wanted?" He flinched, like I'd slapped him. Richard took a step forward. The smooth voice shifted just slightly, an edge underneath. "Alice, let's be reasonable. We can still make this work. Merge the companies. You take 60% control. We clean up our act. Everyone benefits." "Everyone benefits," I repeated. "You were planning to send me to prison. That was worst-case scenario planning. We would never have actually—" "I don't do business with criminals, Richard." His jaw tightened. The mask slipped just for a second. Underneath was something cold and calculating and very, very dangerous. Then the mask came back. "Think carefully, Alice. You're making enemies you don't want." "Is that a threat?" "It's reality." He held my gaze. "The business world is small. You'll regret this." I stepped back and closed the door, locked it, stood there with my hand on the knob listening to muffled voices outside. Victor shouting, Natalie shouting at Victor, Richard on his phone, his voice sharp and clipped. Through the window I watched them climb into Richard's black Mercedes. Richard was still on his phone, one hand cutting the air in angry gestures. Whoever was on the other end wasn't hearing good news. They drove away. I called Robert immediately. "They just left. Richard made threats." "What kind?" "Said I was making enemies, that I'd regret this." Robert was quiet for a moment. "Then, Alice, be careful. Richard Prescott knows dangerous people. Desperate men do reckless things." I hung up and sat in the living room. Same room where James and I had planned Victor's future. Same room where I'd told Victor I was proud of him when he graduated college. I should have called the police right then. Should have hired security. But I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. 2 weeks after I refused their offer, the EPA showed up at my yard. That's when I knew Richard Prescott had made his move. It started small. Anonymous tips sent to our biggest client's allegations that Harper Waste was dumping illegally. 3 contracts suspended pending investigation. Then the black SUVs Tuesday morning, 7 a.m. 3 vehicles, federal plates, agents climbing out in dark suits and serious faces. Special Agent Karen Rhodes, EPA Criminal Investigation Division, short brown hair, sharp eyes. The kind of woman who'd heard every lie ever told and wasn't interested in hearing another one. Mrs. Harper, we have a warrant to search these premises. 6 hours. They tore through everything. Truck storage areas, filing cabinets, the break room refrigerator. And they found exactly what they'd been told they'd find. 55-gallon drums of industrial chemicals, hidden behind old tires in the back storage area. Medical waste, industrial solvents, labels from hospitals and chemical plants. Planted, every last one. Then came the paperwork. Disposal certificates with my forged signature. Fake bank records. Cash payments linking me to offshore accounts I'd never heard of. Then Danny Simmons. I'd fired Danny 3 years ago for stealing tools. He'd threatened to sue, called me names I won't repeat, then vanished. Now he was back. Telling the EPA I'd ordered him to dump chemicals at night. He had logs fabricated, photos staged, and $50,000 in his bank account from an offshore shell company. 5 weeks after the raid, they arrested me, handcuffed me in front of my neighbors. Mrs. Patterson across the street, hand over her mouth. The mailman frozen on the sidewalk. Miranda rights, fingerprints, mugshot, the whole humiliating parade. Bail $500,000. Robert posted it with his own property. I walked out of the federal building with an ankle monitor and the taste of copper in my mouth. Revenue dropped 40% in 2 weeks. Employees quit. Clients disappeared. 27 years of reputation gone in a news cycle. And my heart, my actual physical failing heart, was getting worse. The stress was eating me alive. I could feel it in the tightness that never fully went away now, in the shortness of breath climbing 1 flight of stairs and the pills I was taking 3 times a day instead of 2. Week 7 after the wedding. Late afternoon. Rush hour. I was driving home from Robert's office. Expressway. Stop and go. Ankle monitor heavy on my leg. The car ahead braked suddenly. I pressed the pedal. Nothing. Pressed harder. All the way to the floor. No resistance. No response. The car ahead was getting closer. Fast. I yanked the wheel right. Swerved across a lane. Horns screaming. A semi missed me by inches. I felt the wind of it rock my truck. Pumped the brakes. Nothing. Emergency brake. Pulled it. Slowed slightly, but not enough. Not at 60 miles an hour. Ahead a curve. Concrete barrier on the right. Cars everywhere. 2 choices. Hit the cars or hit the wall. I chose the wall. Time slowed down. The steering wheel vibrating under my hands. The concrete rushing toward me. The screech of tires. The smell of burning rubber. I thought about James. His smile. The way he'd hold my hand during thunderstorms because he knew I was afraid of lightning even though I'd never admit it. I thought about Victor, the baby in the delivery room. His tiny fingers. I thought about Sophie, my daughter, my real daughter. Then impact. Metal crumpling. Glass exploding. My body thrown forward. Head snapping sideways. The truck flipped once, twice, sky ground. Then nothing. I woke up in a hospital bed. Fluorescent lights, beeping machines, the chemical smell of disinfectant. Sophie was beside me, face pale, eyes swollen from crying. Diane stood by the window, arms crossed, jaw tight. Robert paced near the door. "Mom!" Sophie's voice cracked like thin ice. "You're awake." 3 broken ribs, concussion, lacerations on my left arm and forehead. The truck 20 years of faithful service was scrap metal. But that wasn't the worst part. Detective Julia Owens, Chicago PD, arrived an hour later. "Mrs. Harper, your brake line was cut. Clean cut right above the master cylinder. Deliberate." The room went silent. "Someone wanted you dead," she said. Then the doctor came back. Different expression this time. He'd run tests while I was unconscious. "Mrs. Harper, your cardiac function is severely compromised. How long have you been taking this medication without a cardiologist's supervision?" Sophie's head snapped toward me. "What medication?" The secret I'd carried since January, the pills in the glove compartment, the emergency room visit I never told anyone about. It was over. "Mom," Sophie's voice shook. "How long?" 7 months, I said. 7. She pressed her hand over her mouth. You could have died. Not just from the crash, from your own heart. She was right, and I had no defense. I'm sorry, I said. I needed to finish what I started. Sophie didn't yell, didn't lecture. She just took my hand and held it. Tight, like if she let go, I'd disappear. That was worse than yelling. So much worse. Victor called that night. The blocked number somehow got through, or maybe I'd forgotten to block this one. I almost didn't answer. Mom, his voice was raw, wrecked. I heard about the accident. Are you okay? I'm alive. A long silence. Breathing. Then, they tried to kill you. Because of me. You didn't cut my brake line, Victor. But I brought them into your life. I started this. All of it. I waited. Let the silence work. I need to see you, he said. Please, I have something. Something that changes everything. He came to the hospital 3 hours later. Sophie tried to stop him at the door. You almost got her killed, Sophie said. Cold, flat, no room for negotiation. I know. His voice broke. That's why I'm here. I nodded. Sophie stepped aside. Victor walked in and I barely recognized him. He'd lost weight. His shirt hung loose. His hands wouldn't stop moving, gripping the chair, rubbing his jaw, pulling at his collar. He sat down and told me everything. Slowly. Painfully. Not a rehearsed confession, a bleeding wound. How Natalie had targeted him 2 years ago. How Richard had promised him power status, a seat at the table. How the FBI investigation changed everything. Suddenly they needed a scapegoat, and Alice Harper was perfect. After the wedding, Victor said, his voice barely above a whisper. When everything fell apart, Richard and Natalie turned on me. Said if I didn't help them finish it, they'd kill me. Kill you. Burn Harper Waste to the ground. And you believed them? Yes. He looked at his hands. Because I saw what happened to the FBI agent who got too close to their operation. Agent Thomas Collins. He disappeared 2 months ago. Just gone. Richard bragged about it. The room temperature dropped 10 degrees. Then Victor reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. I've been recording them, he said, for 3 weeks. Everything. He pressed play. Richard Prescott's voice filled the hospital room. Clear, unmistakable, cold. The Harper frame-up is perfect. EPA bought the evidence. Danny Simmons sealed it. Alice Harper will be in prison by fall. Then Natalie's voice. And if she fights back, then we handle it. Same way we handled Agent Collins. Brake lines, gas leaks, accidents happen. Sophie stared at the phone. Robert, who'd arrived minutes earlier, leaned forward. There's more, Victor said. Hours more. Richard detailing the EPA setup. The payments to Danny Simmons, the forged documents, all of it. Robert took the phone, listened, made notes. His expression went from grim to granite. This is admissible, he said. Illinois is a one-party consent state. Victor recorded conversations he participated in. It's legal. Victor looked at me. I'll testify. Against Richard. Against Natalie. Against everyone. His eyes were wet. I'll take whatever punishment I deserve. I just want to make this right. I studied my son's face, looking for the con, looking for the angle, looking for the salesman who'd sat across from me at Frank's Diner talking about synergy and rebranding. I didn't find him. What I found was a 35-year-old man who'd made terrible choices and was finally willing to pay for them. You've got a long road ahead, Victor, I said. I know. This doesn't fix everything. It doesn't fix most things. I know that too. I held out my hand. He took it. We didn't hug, didn't cry, just held on. Together, he asked. I hesitated. 1 heartbeat. 2. Together. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Federal courtroom downtown Chicago. I won't drag you through every day. You've been patient enough. The highlights: Diane testified on day 2. 5 years of financial records, offshore accounts, shell companies' payments to Danny Simmons. Every transaction traced to the Prescotts. Under cross-examination, the defense tried to shake her. Diane Walsh didn't shake. 19 years of balancing the books for Alice Harper had made her unshakable. The FBI confirmed the anonymous tip that led them to Harper Waste came from a burner phone purchased by Richard Prescott. Danny Simmons recanted on the stand, broke down crying, admitted Richard paid him $50,000 and threatened to make him disappear like Agent Collins if he didn't testify against me. Victor took the stand on day 8. No designer suit, no expensive watch, just a man telling the truth for the first time in years. The recordings played through the courtroom speakers. Richard's voice, Natalie's voice, every word a nail in their coffin. Then the moment nobody expected, Eleanor Prescott took the stand, Natalie's own mother, called by the prosecution. Richard went white. Eleanor spoke quietly, steadily, like a woman who'd been holding her breath for 35 years and was finally exhaling. "My husband controlled our family completely," she said. "Natalie wasn't the mastermind. She was his instrument, the same way I was for 3 decades. She described Natalie's protective order at 22, how Richard forced her to withdraw it, how from that day forward Natalie did whatever Richard told her. Not because she wanted to, because she was terrified. It didn't excuse what Natalie had done, but it explained it, and it mattered." Richard screamed in the courtroom. Marshals restrained him. The jury watched it all. 2 days of deliberation. 12 counts. Guilty. Every single one. Richard Prescott, 22 years. 10 million in fines. Natalie Prescott, 8 years. The judge noted her coercive circumstances, but emphasized she'd had choices and failed to make the right ones. Victor Harper, 18 months probation. 500 hours of community service. All charges against me dropped. Completely. The EPA issued a formal apology. The FBI cleared Harper Waste of all allegations. Outside the courthouse, Robert read a statement to the press. Sophie stood beside me. Victor stood behind us, head down. Justice was served. But the word felt hollow, like a bell that rings true but rings in an empty room. 11 months later, Saturday morning, July. Frank's Diner. Same booth, same coffee. Same view of the South Side street where I'd lived my entire life. Frank brought my cup without asking. The usual Alice. The usual Frank. A lot had changed. The important things hadn't. Sophie was CEO now, official since January. Revenue hit 41 million last quarter. 298 employees. 3 new commercial contracts. Route optimization that saved 15% on fuel costs. "You built something that lasts," she told me. "I'm just making sure it keeps growing." The James Harper Foundation was thriving, 45% of company shares funding it. In 11 months, we'd helped 73 families' medical bills, funeral costs, college tuition. The things that drown people when life pulls the rug out. Every family we helped, I thought about James. I had the heart surgery 3 months after the trial. Sophie stayed at the hospital for 4 days straight, slept in the chair beside my bed, brought me terrible coffee from the hospital cafeteria and pretended it was good. Victor came every day during my recovery. Didn't say much, just showed up, sat in the corner, brought coffee from Frank's Diner, the real stuff, not hospital poison. He'd been working as a garbage collector for 8 months by then. 5 a.m. starts. Rain, snow, 100-degree heat. He showed up every day. Last month, Sophie promoted him to route supervisor. $52,000 a year. A team of 6. "It's hard," Victor told me over dinner 2 weeks ago. "It's real, and it matters." Something shifted inside me when he said that. A small thing, like a door opening a crack after being locked for a long time. He was dating someone new. Sarah Campbell, 34, elementary school teacher, grew up working class. Didn't care about designer clothes or Italian restaurants. She cared about Victor showing up on time and treating her with respect. Simple things. The things that actually matter. Victor and I had dinner once a month now, 8 times so far. The first few were brutal, long silences, careful words, the conversation of 2 people learning to be around each other again. It got easier, slowly, like physical therapy after surgery, painful, exhausting, and absolutely necessary. We weren't mother and son the way we used to be. Maybe we never would be again, but we were something. The diner door opened. Victor walked in. Saw me, smiled. A real smile. Not the salesman smile, not the one he used at networking events. The real one, crooked, a little shy, the one he'd had as a kid. He looked like his father. He sat down across from me. Frank brought him coffee without asking. "Morning, Mom." "Morning." Sophie landed another contract, medical facility on the west side. She told me, "She's incredible." Yeah, she is. We sat in comfortable silence. The diner buzzed around us. Families eating pancakes, old men arguing about the Cubs, the clatter of dishes from the kitchen. "I got my route times down 12% this month," Victor said, pride in his voice. Real pride, not the performed kind. "That's good work." "It feels good." He looked at his coffee. "I never thought I'd say this, but I actually like what I do. It's honest." "That's what matters." He looked up, met my eyes. "Mom, I need to say something." I waited. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for not giving up on me, even when I deserved it." My throat tightened. I took a sip of coffee to buy a second. "You're my son," I said, Sandy said. "I will always fight for you, even when I'm fighting against what you're doing." Victor nodded. His eyes were wet. He blinked it back, took a breath. Frank brought our food. Eggs, bacon, toast. We ate in silence, the good kind. The kind that doesn't need filling. After breakfast, we walked outside together. South Side Chicago on a Saturday morning. Sun hitting the pavement. Someone washing a car across the street. Kids on bicycles. The smell of charcoal, someone grilling early. "Next month?" Victor asked. "Next month." He held out his hand. I shook it. Firm. Honest. Then, and I don't know which of us moved first, the handshake turned into a hug. Brief, awkward. The kind of hug two people give when they're out of practice but trying. It was enough. He walked to his truck, a used pickup 5 years old, bought with money he'd earned himself, and drove away. I stood on the sidewalk watching him go. I thought about James, about the promise I'd made in that delivery room 35 years ago. I'd kept it not the way I'd planned, but I'd kept it. I thought about Sophie running the company I'd built, carrying the name I'd protected. I thought about Eleanor Prescott's quiet nod in that ballroom, about the courage it took to sit still while the world exploded around you and then stand up in a courtroom and tell the truth. I thought about my mother Ruth, her rough hands, her hard voice. "Get up, Alice. That boy needs his mother." I got up. Every time I got up. Some bridges take years to build and seconds to burn. Rebuilding them, that takes something else entirely. Patience. Forgiveness. The willingness to show up even when you don't know if the other person will meet you halfway. Victor and I weren't there yet, but we were walking toward each other. Slowly, carefully. One breakfast at a time. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all any of us can ask for. Second chances aren't free. They're earned. Slowly, painfully, one honest day at a time. And if you've made it this far in my story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting yourself? Between loving someone and holding them accountable? What did you choose? Drop a comment below. I genuinely want to know. And if this story helped you see something more clearly, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Stand your ground, protect your dignity, and never let anyone, not even the people you love most, convince you that self-respect is selfish. My name is Alice Harper, and I'm not ashamed of it.